Hi everybody, and welcome back to episode 4 of the Doctor and the Dogman podcast. We are somewhere very lovely tonight. Our location hasn't changed, it's moved outside, but still in the very, very lovely surroundings here. So yeah, we're sitting in nature. It's going to be the last time, I think. We might get one more, I don't know.
Because we film in the evening.
Yeah.
We're not going to, even if it is a nice day, by the time another month comes around, we're going to end up with it being too dark.
True.
So we have backup lighting. Whether we actually need it or whether we have to reset the cameras at some point, I don't know.
This could be an episode of two halves, half outside, half inside.
Or half in the light, half in the dark.
Yeah. Half you can hear us, but you can't see us. So we're on to episode 4 now of the podcast. Yeah, and as I say, we're changing things up a little bit this evening, aren't we, for our location, just to close off the summer months.
So what has your research been messing around with this month? Because I haven't spoken to you since the last podcast, have I?
No, I don't know whether that's been summer or it's just been we've both
been on holidays, and you've had lots of, I've seen pictures on Facebook and whatever you're on, of doing stuff with dogs and family
and just on the pages of notes.
There is wind here. If there's an odd flutter in the audio, it's the wind. So yeah, what have you been researching? What are we going to be talking about tonight?
Well, to be honest, I only came across a BBC article, which I didn't even intend to come across, and I thought, you know what, that might actually be something that I need to pick your brains about more, from actually, weirdly, a perspective of a dog owner and not really as a researcher. Something I've never come across before, but the BBC and the RSPCA have done an article last month, July.
Yeah, okay, yes.
Talking about something called Brucella Canis.
And the importing of dogs from abroad, and the rescue centres should be licensed and all that. Yeah,
it was a really lengthy article, but something really interesting that I thought maybe we could bring to the podcast, because it was certainly something that I have never come across in my research, obviously not researching dogs, dog behaviours, dog health so much until the last kind of 4 months, but also as a new dog owner as well, something that you hear about other kind of infectious diseases, don't you? And obviously in terms of prevention, so obviously we know that when we buy puppies, and obviously they have their vaccinations, and we try our best to obviously limit any of the potential.
Yeah, but even that's quite interesting, because I was reading something on the Kennel Club website, and they were saying you can take your unvaccinated puppy out and take it around vaccinated dogs. Okay. Which isn't actually correct. If it's a vaccinated dog, it can still pass on some of the viruses to your dog. So even the Kennel Club don't fully understand, or maybe they do and they've just put the wrong information, or maybe, I don't know, but I'm like, that's not what I would be doing with a puppy. There is a risk of an infection. Yeah,
so obviously for people listening, obviously I think obviously having Marlowe, done it the correct way in terms of waiting so many weeks after second round of vaccinations and things for him to then obviously go out and be socialised and obviously experience the world in, outside the home, isn't it? So what's obviously the guidance at the moment, obviously, for puppies?
Well, the guidance is that you should keep I would always say keep your puppy secure. Yep. If you need to take them out and do some socialising with them, take them out off the floor. Yeah. You can take them out in your car. I mean, if you've got an estate car, put them in the boot of the car, open the boot of the car and watch the world go by. Yep. All those sights and sounds and smells are all things that the dog will start to take on board. And yes, they can meet other people, but again, it's the transmission of these viruses isn't from, unlike Brucella Canis, it isn't through bodily fluids. Yep. It's actually through the virus being padded in a lot of cases on the paws. So it might be lying on the floor somewhere, your dog walks over it. It's got nothing to do with a vaccinated dog. Vaccinated dogs are only safe because when they pick up the vaccine, they pick up the virus, the vaccine is there to kill it. And the antibodies, it makes an immune response and sorts it out. So yeah, there is a lot of, and Brucella Canis as well as part of this is quite an unknown disease. Yeah, sure. The whole thing, when I saw the article come out, it was quite interesting because I've been talking about Brucella Canis and where it's coming from, the street dogs of Europe. And 3 years ago I did my first video on it, saying this is something that's going to get bigger. It could become a problem if we don't get our ducks in a row and start to get a programme in place of vaccinating, because there is no need to vaccinate when you bring your dog into the country. So a dog comes in from Europe, an imported street dog, as thousands of them are, and there is no requirement for that dog to be tested for Brucella Canis, which is basically a zoonotic disease. For those who don't know, it is a zoonotic disease that can jump from dog to human, and when it jumps from dog to human, it can cause some very serious not symptoms, that's the word I'm looking for, problems. And basically, when it jumps from the dog to the human, you can get everything from, well, let's look at the top of it. You can abort unborn fetuses. Pregnant women can have real problems. People who are immunosuppressed can have real issues with it. It can make men sterile, and the problems just come down from there. It's a serious problem. There is no cure for it. If the dog has it, you can manage it a little bit with antibiotics, but you need to have a very strong biosecurity in place, because it can be transmitted to humans through bodily fluids. So yeah, that was a big thing 3 years ago, and now it's gone from, so the report said, a few cases a few years ago to over 300. And I know of several cases through vets that I know that have had cases, and they've had multiple dogs having to be put to sleep.
It's just when I was looking at like the actual report from obviously the BBC, and obviously you would say, sometimes I think we talked about on the podcast about how sometimes we'll look into topics and we'll start to say, okay, well, where has this information been generated from? So when I think you see an article by the BBC, there's some, for me at least, being a researcher but taking, always throwing caution to the wind with the stuff that you read online. Actually, I think for me as a dog owner, seeing an article released by the BBC, and obviously in connection with the RSPCA, there's some level of credibility certainly for me. And obviously very early in the article, and can provide the link. But it's interesting that obviously we're looking at roughly 3 cases in the UK identified pre-2020, and now we're looking at 330 plus cases. I actually think, from just the tiny bit that I've read, I actually think there's way more than that.
Well, when I started doing my research into it 3 years ago, there was a study I found, and they randomly tested some in the region of 5,000 street dogs from all over the Europe area, and out of those 5,000, I think it was something like 3.7%, just under 4%, actually had the virus. Now, the problem is that when a dog has this virus, it can lie dormant for years. The dog looks totally healthy, doesn't have symptoms in a lot of cases. Some of them can be asymptomatic almost forever, but they are still able to transmit it. So that is the problem, that it's not as though you bring the dog into the country and it's lying on its side looking sick and frothing at the mouth. There are no symptoms. So it's a very difficult thing to spot without testing. And on the reverse of that, that's where part of the problems come later on, when you start to, obviously the report comes out from the RSPCA, which is, their problem is behavioural problems and importing new diseases. Now, in total, I would say put Brucella Canis to one side, because that's a serious, serious problem. There's a couple of other zoonotic diseases that have been imported, and there's probably about another 4 or 5 viral type of diseases that have been imported. And a few years ago, I was speaking to vets who were telling me little stories about they had a dog in and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. It didn't match any disease, the symptoms it was presenting with. And through further questioning, they found out that a Romanian rescue dog had popped up in the street just down the road, and that had been carrying a virus, and it had passed it. And although it didn't affect the Romanian street dog because it had built up antibodies over the years, we haven't got it. It's very much like the Spanish explorers going to South America. We're not going to get the same problem. It's not going to wipe dogs out, don't get me wrong, but we're bringing dogs into the country. We're not testing those dogs, and they're coming in with some serious, some not serious. But those viruses and bacterium diseases are coming in and our dogs have got no inbuilt immunity to them, so we're having problems with them, and then you're having to put them on medication to solve these problems, antibiotics and God knows what. So, yeah, it's a big problem.
It's interesting now that it obviously is being shed in terms of the light, in the BBC and the RSPCA are obviously at kind of front and centre of this, because obviously, you know, the benefit of research and the benefit of all of these things is actually it takes a certain level of prevalence, unfortunately, sometimes for it to become more high profile or more research or more funding into the things that we look at. And we look at, you know, always, you know, we always say prevalence is, you know, prevention, is better than the cure. But the problem is, while the cases are 3 or 93, now we're getting to 303 that we know about, or 333, and the numbers are obviously increasing exponentially each year. They'll get to a point, won't they, where people like the BBC, RSPCA, are going to have to take this really seriously in terms of some level of prevention. But what's kind of your take on, I mean, once it's in, isn't it?
Well, it's very similar to brucellosis was in the cattle herd in the UK, and we've eradicated that. The government put a huge amount of money into a testing programme and a culling programme, so we got rid of it. I have a friend who's a vet who was one of the main vets who was responsible for planning and delivering that whole process of removing it from the cattle herd. And we were fairly lucky that we caught it as early as we did, because it wasn't endemic. Now that's the problem, is that if we do nothing about it, it gets to the point when there are so many dogs with it that it becomes, you know, there are 10, 12 million dogs in the country. So it's not necessarily just the rescue dogs, because if a rescue dog meets an ordinary dog, and again, they are playing, they sneeze or they lick each other, it can pass it on. So you may have a dog that has got no connection with coming from abroad, but because it's been around a rescue dog or a street dog, whatever word you want to use, it's caught the disease. Yeah. So you end up in a situation where when it becomes that embedded in a disease, you just can't get rid of it. And that's the problem that we've got, that it could end up being a real problem. And the difficulty with that also is that there's pushback from the stuff online, and the stuff I was reading and seeing and hearing was phenomenal. You know, everything, the report was talking about all rescue centres need to be licensed. There needs to be a whole process of licensing. I mean, I can't disagree with that. I think it's everybody should be licensed. You breed dogs, you're licensed. Yeah. You import dogs, you rescue centre dogs, you're licensed. Yeah. To the fact of the matter is as well, if you own a dog, you should have a licence. Yeah. You know, and I've got my thoughts in my head about that, which we might come on to. But certainly for these rescue centres, we've seen some horrendous situations in the news recently of rescue centres just doing horrible things to dogs. Wow. You know, people are giving up their dogs, and they're finding dogs that have been starved and emaciated, dogs are being killed, and they're taking money off people and just destroying the dogs. Wow. So from an owner who has given their dog up and had to go through that trauma, to find out that the rescue centre they sent it to wasn't legitimate and the dog's been starved to death and just died a horrible death. Horrendous. So you need to licence, and you need to have oversight to make sure that those things don't happen. Yeah. Now, there was huge kickback on that. No, we don't need to licence. And it was really interesting to see that there was a lot of the comments being made on social media and in forums and stuff like that was from people who have rescue centre dogs. And, you know, they were going on about saying, it's... First of all, they started going at the... it was almost like, and I don't know whether with your PhD in psychology, there's some words you put to it, but it was almost like they felt it was a personal assault on them. And they were getting very defensive. And they were saying, well, my rescue centre was brilliant and they did this and they asked these questions and they did that. And then we got people saying things like, well, I went abroad because I couldn't get one in the UK and there was all these restrictions. Yeah. So they're almost trying to justify their actions. And I thought, this isn't about you or your rescue centre, it's about the whole picture. And there are some brilliant rescue centres out there and people who import them who do brilliant jobs. But there's also those that aren't. Just like you get shoddy builders and brilliant builders, shoddy lawyers and brilliant lawyers. Yeah. Every industry has them.
Yeah.
So just regulate and get rid of the shoddy ones.
Yeah, it's when I stumbled across this topic, I thought, you know, it's really difficult almost have come at it from a point of view of being a dog owner now as opposed to being a researcher. I think one of the things that I will say, I don't think there's near enough research on this topic at all. I mean, anybody that works in this space that is researching this from a diagnostic, a testing point of view, right up to, you know, any kind of numbers of prevalence or prevention will, you know, have so many questions that they can ask because, you know, and so much work that they can do. But I think something that's really struck me the most is when we obviously see these, you know, cases, like you say, in cattle. You know, I'm a massive animal person, and I would say I absolutely love cows as much as I love dogs. Like, I am just an animal lover through and through. Why I wasn't a vet, I don't know, but maybe it would have been too hard to be a vet in terms of emotionally, obviously, as a psychologist.
A different perspective when you're doing the job, then actually I'm saving animals.
Yeah, and I think the point that I come at it from is we have a bit of a different stance, I believe, and can stand corrected on how we eradicate things in cattle compared to how we even think about eradicating things in family pets.
Well, you can't do the culling.
No, nor would we want to.
Nor would we want to.
And not that we want to with cattle, but we haven't got the same...
Well, it's a different perspective. Just,
yes.
You probably know I've had this issue over DNA testing with Welsh Springer Spaniels and the whole furore attached to that. And somebody made a comment about, you know, line breeding in cattle. Now, when you read anything about line breeding for cattle, they talk about heavy culling. So it becomes matter of course to actually selectively cull. Now, there's a couple of herds of cattle in Scotland who are basically copies of each other. I can't remember the name of them, but they're big horns, white, and they've been so left together and inbred and inbred and inbred and inbred and inbred that they're basically copies of each other and they're healthy. But what they've had to have happen in that space is that there's been an awful lot of death, early death, you know, cows born with diseases and problems and they've died, they've had to cull them. They leave the bulls to actually fight. So again, a weak bull is going to get killed in a fight. So it's a completely different world to actually working with pet dogs. So yeah, you're quite right. Eradicating anything, whether it's genetic or whether it's a disease, is completely different with cattle. Yeah. You know, I'm here next to a cattle farm, and they have the vets round to test for TB, and you know the slightest result that it's TB, they're closing the farm down, they're taking the cattle away, and they're slaughtered. Yeah. So it's a very, very different thing. We certainly can't be doing that. But what makes it more difficult is that these people who were, and again, I'm not saying they felt it was a personal attack on them. It just looked like it and sounded like it. Yeah. They just felt that they were being, you know, victimised. And there's probably, I guess, you don't want to think that the dog that you've brought from abroad is bringing a disease into the country. I don't want to feel as though I've made a bad mistake. I don't want somebody to think my dog is an inferior dog. Excuse me. And I just think it is. It's potentially they feel it's like an affront to them or an assault on them, whereas in reality they're saying that there are bad rescue centres and we need to get on top of that. Yeah. These diseases have come in, and then the next problem that we're getting is that they go from trying to say that my rescue centre is brilliant and they did it properly, so why do we need to licence them? And on the other side, we then got them saying that all these tests they're all fake, they're all rubbish. The test is inaccurate, so they're then trying to rubbish the test, which is incorrect. If you look at the data on it, it's 1 in 10,000 is the accuracy with it, one error in 10,000 vaccines. So, in 10,000 tests. So the accuracy is there. So they're making statements about stuff that is absolutely, completely not true. And now I don't know whether they're saying that because somebody else has told them that, or it's just this Chinese whispers again. Yep. But ultimately, they're coming out with these type of statements, and they're also then saying things like, Brucella Canis is not really a problem. I've heard it's a sexually transmitted disease. It's only a problem for breeders. Yep. And it's this whole, we're dissing it and minimising it. You know, you can live with your dogs. It's not a real problem. Now, again, I can understand it from the perspective that if somebody now comes out and says there's a problem with your breed or your dog where you've got it from and you need to test for this. We have it as breeders. You know, we will test all our dogs, we'll DNA test them and we'll hip score them. And it's a scary time.
Yeah, sure.
You know, you have the dog tested and it comes back with, sorry, there's a fault or a problem with your dog. You can't breed from that dog. So you've spent 12, 18 months, 2 years bringing that dog up, nurturing it, developing it, getting excited about what you're going to do with it. And some test goes and says, sorry, your dog's not healthy enough. Now, there is the breeders who will go, oh, forget that. Yeah. That's still test. I'm taking cleft lip puppy to the vet's tomorrow. I've checked his heart a few times. I think he's okay. I want a vet's opinion as well. Now, that could be fantastic or it could be absolutely devastating. Yeah. You know, I could be told tomorrow his heart's screwed and he's going to live another 2 weeks. I don't know. Touching wood. But those are the things you have to do. And it's, you know, you can't be putting your head in the sand, whether you're a breeder or an owner, because you have a responsibility to all those other people around you. Yeah. So they started to say that obviously the test was wrong. Brucella Canis isn't a real problem. It's only a sexually transmitted disease. And I had one person, I heard them saying, the response was, well, it's transmitted, it's not a problem. Then the response was, it's transmitted via bodily fluids. Saliva's a bodily fluid. And the questions and the conversation just stopped. Yeah. And I think they thought bodily fluids means sexually transmitted fluids. But it's not. It's saliva, it's sneezing. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a really, really strange thing that they're trying to minimise it. I can understand or I can get a feel as to why they don't have to test their dog, because if they test their dog, it's got the disease, then they are having to deal with that problem. But if your dog has that disease, you've got to deal with that problem at some point. And it's probably better to deal with it before it's infected you and your friend and your neighbour and your relative. And then the next thing they start to go at is that there is the hare's risk assessment. Have you seen that in your looking around? No. Okay. Hare's risk assessment says that there's a very, very low chance of this being transmitted from dog to human. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, do you know where I'm coming from? Yeah. Now, that's quite true, but if you read, because that's what it says in the report, yes. But if you actually read into the report more, it's saying that if you don't have a lot of contact now, and granted, if you look at it, how we lived with dogs 50 years ago, they lived outside in kennels. They didn't live inside with us. They didn't sleep on our beds. They didn't lick our faces. Yeah. They didn't give us kisses. All those things are opportunities to pass bodily fluids. And therefore, the risk, when you look at it in real terms with how we live with our dogs now, is high.
Yeah, I think we need to put a different spin on it, and I think that's how I came to it. I thought, look, this is a sort of a problem that is presenting itself more in this country for one reason or another that we've covered in terms of, okay, we've got dogs that are imported that are then rehomed. We've obviously got, bringing other dogs in to obviously breed and all other potential reasons why it might start to become more prevalent in the UK. And I thought, but the real problem here with now removing something if it gets too far, as obviously we've just discussed, is this idea that we put human emotion onto our dogs and also ourselves. That they are as much a part of our family as for some people as a child, as a sister, as a brother, as a mum, as a dad. We bring these pets into our homes. Having Marlowe now, he's 20 weeks old and he's a part of our family like he's always been there. So I can understand, and this is what I was thinking about, when we get told as a dog owner, okay, you've really thought you've done a good thing, so you've either purchased or rehomed a dog that has needed a home, for example, and then you go, actually, well, your dog is part of this prevalence and this number of dogs now that have got this disease that essentially not only is it going to cause a problem to all of the dogs that it comes into contact with when you walk your dog down at the local park, and you know that's potentially spreading to every other dog in your village, town, city. But you've got this idea that actually it might affect your health, you know, your family's health, your children. And when I really looked into it, you know, they say that the risk is low in terms of the transmission, obviously from dog to human, but like we've just said, we've provided multiple examples of now how dogs infiltrate kind of our lives and our everyday routines more than they ever have in the last 20 years, sleeping on the bed, you know, licking your face, etc. And one of the really interesting things that I came across was, I think in 2012 there was a case in America, and very much like here, we'd kind of eradicated it in cattle, and then obviously now we're starting to see it obviously in canines, and then we're thinking, okay. And I think there was this story in 2012 where somebody in New York actually had had a dog, and then their 3-year-old child became so ill, you know, from, you know, basically brucellosis. So you think to yourself, when we look at other topics and we go, okay, well, if we're thinking about this idea that obviously we bring pets into our home, but we have priorities of our own children and things like that, we start to think, actually, how far do we go and let it affect our own health? Because, you know, there's maybe questions we could have asked, or places that we'd got dogs from. And I think it's, you know, always the topic of this podcast, and always what we're trying to do is obviously bring current topics to and dismiss
the untruths,
dismiss the myths, but also I think giving people the information to make responsible decisions. I mean, I did not really know about this condition, interestingly enough, and I just think if we can bring this to the forefront and say, actually, these are the things that you need to look for. I mean, I was not pleasantly surprised, actually, correct myself. I was surprised that only at this current moment, Scottish rescue centres are required to be licensed, yes. But England, Wales, Northern Ireland, not at all.
There's over 1,000 rescue centres in the UK, and they need licensing. Every breeder needs licensing. You can't have, and the argument is, oh, it's more paperwork and we can't afford it, it costs us more, it costs us this. Put your prices up. Put your prices up. People are buying dogs from rescue centres. A large part of it is because they believe they're doing something good. Yeah. They believe they are doing the right thing. They're helping a dog have a better life.
Giving a dog a second chance.
Giving a dog a second chance, exactly. You know, and a lot of that is, you know, nothing to do with price. No. So if you are going to be an upstanding organisation, and it's the same thing, you're an upstanding organisation, put your prices up. If you've got the right type of people who are going to come to your organisation for a dog, they won't mind that little increase in price to cover the cost of your paperwork, to know that you are licensed, that you are above board.
They've asked these questions.
Watchdog have done it, Panorama have done it, there's multiple television programmes, and they have linked back the collection, and I use that word correctly, the collection of street dogs abroad, and dumped into trucks and sent off. It's organised crime.
Yes.
And it's, you know, they were saying in, I think the place I looked at last, they were saying Turkey, you can get yourself a rescue dog off the street for a couple of euros. So then you're paying £300, £400, £500, £600, £700 over here with transport costs and all. It's big money. Yeah. It's big money for organised crime.
And you can be quite naive, you know, to the fact that you think you're, you know, there is really good organisations out there that will take street dogs from Eastern Europe and say, do you know what, actually, we're going to take these dogs from this place. And I know several people myself who have, you know, adopted and rescued dogs not from this country. And you think that you're doing something really helpful, but actually you don't realise that there actually is always people that will be out there to profiteer from things that other people are doing, you know, out of the goodness of their health.
Exactly. They are preying on the compassion and the kind-heartedness of these people who want to rescue these dogs. And it's not that the statistics of behavioural problems is phenomenal. Whether you're buying them from abroad or whether you're buying them from the UK, between 50 and 70% of all dogs they've done user surveys, owner surveys, have come saying, yeah, we had behavioural problems with these dogs. So it's not as though you're buying the model dog. So people are investing in potential health problems. They're investing in potential behavioural problems. So I've got a lot of work to do behind this. Yeah. So therefore, it's not like they're getting it. I'm doing it for an easy trip. Yeah. They are picking a harder job.
Yeah. And the thing is, these dogs are probably, a lot of them in the main, have lived on the streets.
And that's one of the big problems. They're not used to living in the home. They're used to fighting for dominance in the pack. Yeah. For anybody out there who says dominance doesn't exist, it does, believe me. But that's a whole different subject.
That's a topic for
another day. But they are fighting for food. There'll be scraps of food that they want, or they'll be, and they'll be fighting for it. Yeah. And it is that type of thing. There is that dominance level in the pack. And they have a completely different way of life out there. I know 3 people who have brought street dogs from abroad, brought them into this country, and had to rehome them very quickly, or send them back to a shelter in one case, because the dog was either attacking their other dogs in the house, or just couldn't handle being in a house. It was stressed, it was pacing, it was panting, it was a right mess in one case, and the dog just couldn't adapt. And
totally different world, isn't it? To expect actually a dog to go from living in that, society and scenario to then living in the home as a family pet is completely different.
And this is the thing, you see, when you look at it, there is a bit of a skewed perspective in my mind, because when you look back on what we were saying before about them saying, oh, it's only a low risk. Well, a low risk is a risk. It's not like it's a low risk and you might just get a sniffle for a week. No. You could actually, if you're immunosuppressed, have a real problem with this Brucella Canis. Yeah. If you're pregnant, you could have a real problem with this disease. Yeah. So even if it's a small, tiny, it's still a serious problem if you catch it.
It's happened to somebody out there.
It's happened to several people out there. Yeah. There's a lady local to here that's had it. So why are we, minimising a serious condition like that and saying, oh, it's only a small risk, so we don't need to test. Oh, we don't need to bother about it. It's not really an issue. It's only a small risk. A small risk or not, there are serious consequences for it. So that's the first question you have to ask is, why are people doing that? And then when you go and extrapolate that same thing back, you're then saying, well, why are they then sort of, not really looking at the whole big picture? It's almost like we want to, what do they call it? Virtue signalling. Yeah. I want to be seen as doing the good thing, and I'm going to tell everybody about it. Yeah. And I've got a rescue dog, and everybody's going to know I've got a rescue dog. Great, if you've done it, fine, I've not got a problem with it. But, it just seems as though there is a very, very strong perspective on people who are trying to defend their decision. And if that's your decision, fine. To the point that they're actually saying, don't buy a dog from don't buy reho, don't buy adopt, or don't shop adopt. And you're not adopting them, you're paying for them, you're buying them.
Yeah, we've got this narrative in this country now massively, isn't it? Like, don't go and buy a puppy from a breeder. We've got far too many dogs that need rehoming in rehoming centres. You hear this all the time.
Why are we then going to buy them from abroad?
Yeah.
So why aren't we buying them from the rehoming centres in the UK?
Yeah. There's just so many questions on this topic, and I think it's something to really unpick about human behaviour is this idea that we make a decision and, as a species, we want to stand by that decision and we want to believe that that is the correct decision.
Yes, we do. And then when a report like this comes out, you can then see why people get a bit defensive and put the barriers up. Whoa.
And what I think people need to remember about this is actually that the ideology of where this has come from and you trying to give a dog a second chance, 100%, that is the case. And we absolutely stand by that. And I think what's needed to be put across better in the messaging is actually the responsibility can be sat at a higher level, because actually, holding your hands up, going out and buying a puppy even, this might not be a condition like myself that you might think that you would need to ask the questions about. And there are so many people out there with even less knowledge than I had about what are the types of questions that you need to ask. Obviously, we've discussed previously in a different episode, haven't we, the importance of obviously ensuring that you're purchasing your puppy from licensed breeders and all the regulations that come alongside that. And I think you said on one episode, we've had the council here this week checking, all our licenses, etc. So I think if you are somebody out there that has a dog that has come from Europe, or you've rehomed from another, a different country, this article actually doesn't say about owners. The onus is on you, and this is all of your problem.
I have no problems where if you want to get a dog, and my perspective is that they're buying from abroad,
yes,
for two reasons, I think, and I think the first reason is that in the UK there's a lot more rules and regulations. You've got to do this, you've got to have a secure garden, no children under 6, no this, no that, no the other. And there's a lot more... and I can understand that because they are being held by UK law. I'm a UK rescue centre. If my dog that I've sold to you goes and bites a child, I've got potentially, A, bad publicity. If I'm an RSPCA or a Battersea Dogs Home or whatever, it doesn't do my reputation any good. But B, probably you've got rights to sue them. So therefore, they have to put those things into place. And this is where we start to go with this argument from this with these people to start with. Then they started jumping off the fact that the tests were rubbish and Brucella Canis wasn't a real problem. Then the BBC got it in the neck. And the RSPCA. Oh, the RSPCA are a crap organisation, excuse my language. There was worse than that said. Yep. They euthanise dogs at the drop of a hat. They've done this, they've done that, they've done the other. The BBC, they are so biased in their reporting. And again, same thing. I saw that comment by somebody who was kicking off the BBC are biased. And it was almost like foregone conclusion. We don't even need to take this report as being serious because the BBC are biased. And then the response was, well, explain to me why the BBC are biased in this article. Yeah. How so? Who benefits from it? And once again, the conversation stopped. So we have a lot of opinion coming forward from these people with very little to back it up, which strikes me again that they're feeling defensive, they're pushing up against things, they're not feeling comfortable with this sort of approach. And it isn't a go at them. You've bought your dog because you had a reason, and it doesn't matter what your reasons are, they were right for you. You bought your dog from a breeder. Those decisions were right for you. Yeah. Might not be right for the next person or that person over there. But at the end of the day, that's your decision and it's up to you. And nobody should be slamming their opinion into you. You've done wrong, you should have bought from here, or you shouldn't have bought from a rescue centre because you bought from abroad. People have had their reasons of why they've done it. And that's not up for debate. It's your decision. You should be allowed in this life to make those decisions yourself. Yep. But where it gets funky is that they are then starting to push back. And as I say, the RSPCA are a horrendous organisation. They have done all this wrong and they've done all that wrong, and then the BBC were biased. So it was a huge pushback.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, that I think human nature causes us sometimes to be defensive if we feel even remotely, I don't know, grouped in with any kind of negative publicity, or we've made a decision that might implicate others, or I think there's something more that needs unpicking about it in terms of why is it that we are necessarily pushing back. It's not saying that the decision that you've made is wrong. It's saying actually there are steps that can be taken earlier on that could protect you, your family, the dogs even from this situation. And I think what really struck me was when I was reading through the article, which I would say, I did not find it biased in one way. I think it pulled information from a variety of sources, and I think I've spoke on this podcast about the importance of that and where this information comes from, and are we generating it from AI, or actually are we generating it from scientific sources? And I think the article pulled together really nicely several sources of information. We're talking about scientific prevalence of how many cases have been, identified in the country over several years. We then go on to obviously have discussions with people who work in this space as scientific researchers in laboratories, for example. And I think also on from that, there was real world examples of people who have adopted or purchased dogs, from outside of the UK, I think it was either in that report or a slightly different one that I'd read about a lady who came forward and really was advocating for this to be looked at more. I think she'd adopted a dog from Romania, and this dog was basically delivered, if you like, to the home address, and within a few weeks I think this dog had something like 12 puppies. Not only did the dog that she rehomed have this condition, they went on to find that all of the puppies then that had then been later subsequently rehomed had Brucella Canis. So now we're talking about, we think we're adopting one dog into the UK from Eastern Europe, but actually now we've got 13 dogs rehomed in the UK from Europe. So
but that I don't know, but that dog shouldn't have been able to travel, because they shouldn't allow pregnant dogs to travel over a certain...
Yeah. So the dog that she adopted, she didn't know was pregnant.
Didn't she?
No.
So the paperwork was false.
So the paperwork wasn't accurate, right? Correct. So what she's saying is, if you talk to somebody that has been affected in the real world about this, you would always advocate for this to be tested, for you to get it from licensed to rehoming centres and for all of these things, because I think then that begins to weigh heavy on you as a dog owner to go, actually, not only have I thought I'm doing a good thing bringing one dog into the UK, which I was told was one dog, I've now brought a female dog into the UK which had
X amount of puppies. 6, 7,
12, I can't remember the exact amount of puppies, but now obviously also you're saying there's some congenital aspect to this that they might carry, and I'm not 100% sure whether all of them had it, but there was a risk that obviously then you've got significantly more than one in the UK with this. And I think what really struck me was not that Marlowe has ever been or will ever be at daycare, or our situation doesn't kind of require that level of, intervention in the day where he goes and is with other dogs to exercise, etc. I know other people's working circumstances are different. But when I was reading articles and it was saying, actually, I've purchased my puppy from a reputable licensed breeder in the UK, and then what I've done is my working circumstances mean that maybe I choose for my own reason to drop my dog off at a daycare that I know via a friend, or that works for me in my personal circumstance, and then your dog comes home and that daycare provider has to say to you, we've had somebody adopt a dog from Europe, and they now come to the daycare, and now their owners come to us and said that this dog has a high potential, that it's got Brucella Canis, and that's spent a week with your dog. And these people have...
The knock-on effect is doggy daycares are going to go bust.
Yeah.
Right, left and centre dog walkers are going to go out of business.
Yeah.
Unless you can prove that the dogs that you're walking have got the test and are clear for Brucella Canis, then in reality, those businesses will cease to exist. Mm-hmm. And by the fact that the amount of people who will go, either I'm not going to let my dog go to that, I'm going to change my working life, I'm going to take my dog to the office. Yes, it would be a bit easy to drop it off at doggy daycare, but I'm not going to risk that. No. So there's a whole huge knock-on.
Yeah.
And, I got into Brucella Canis to know about it when we started importing Welsh Springer Spaniels from abroad. Yeah. And we imported them, and we came across the tests, and they hadn't been tested to come into this country because there wasn't a need to. But when they came in, we tested them. Yeah. And I was fully prepared to put them to sleep. Because it's not just about you and your dog. It's about the problems that dog can create for my other dogs, for my friends and people. I'll just rehome it somewhere. No, you can't do that. Yeah. This dog has a disease that is zoonotic. So... it was a really... We felt confident that the dogs wouldn't have had it from the breeders they came from. Yeah. And also the countries that they came from, it was a small risk. Nothing like in Europe. But still, we did the test, and when the test went off, my heart was in my mouth when the vet rang and said, we've got your tests for you. And it's like... and then, luckily, they were all negative. Yeah. But you've got to do the right thing. And I remember when I first started talking about Brucella Canis 3 years ago, saying it's a problem. It's going to be a problem. And I was getting, don't talk stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. And one woman put on my social media, why would I test my dog if it meant putting it to sleep? Yeah. If it's got the disease? And my comment was, because your dog could infect dozens and dozens of other dogs, your friend, your relatives, your pregnant, whatever.
When it transfers into humans.
Why? That just is irresponsible dog ownership.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing that I find most interesting about some of these topics that we discuss, that there is such a fine boundary between human emotion and behaviour and dog ownership. And we could talk about this all day, but I think we are, you know, whether we choose to admit it or not, we are totally a species that sometimes ignorance is bliss. We can't cope sometimes. Yeah, we absolutely can't cope. You know, I put myself in the shoes of those people now, and Marlowe's 20 weeks old, complete part of my family. We were in love with him and all of that. And then you get to the point where somebody goes, okay, well, you can do this test, but if you do this test, it means that if he's got it, you know, we're not talking about curing it here. You know, there's no antibiotic that can cure it. It can lie dormant in him, but actually can have real world effects on you as human beings, which obviously most things aren't transmissible in that way. And then you start to think about the implications, and you think, do you know, it might just be easier if I don't know. So I can resonate with those people.
Resonate.
Yeah, not resign from this podcast. There we go. We're resigning. But yeah,
I can agree with you 100%. It's a horrible. I've had to do it.
Yeah.
It's a decision that you don't want to have to make, and you know, hats off. There was when I did the last videos about it a few years ago, there was an awful lot of people who messaged me and said, I'm going to test my dog. And and I was with them. It was like, really, you know, great. But, you know, it's a hard decision to do.
Yeah.
Be prepared. And, you know, you'd have people. I had a lady message me and say, because I was talking about Bram, one of our dogs, and I was talking about his journey through it. And she misunderstood what I was talking about on the videos and said, oh, did he get through it? And I went, no. He's not cured, he's not got through it, he never had it. There is no cure. Your dog, there's no antibiotics, there's nothing. And she went, pardon? And she'd been led to believe by the people she was speaking to that you can have your dog and you can give it antibiotics and it'll suppress it for the rest of its life and your dog will be safe and everything will be safe. It's like, no, you need to go and speak to different people. And she was devastated by it because she'd got a completely different perspective on what was available to her. And she thought the dog I was talking about, Bran, had actually had it and was now cured. It's like, no.
And I think that's where sometimes with a lot of things with, you know, canine behaviour and obviously human behaviour and this idea that we live, hopefully, touch wood, you know, quite harmoniously between, don't we? And you know, everybody out there, and how many hundreds of millions and thousands of dogs have we got across the world as family pets? And there's this idea that, you know, as dog owners, we're thinking, okay, so you're telling me that my dog's got a condition, but it can lie dormant. He doesn't, or she doesn't appear ill, unwell, you know, and all of these things. Whereas we might find it easier to understand if we could see our dog was sick and ill and poorly, and we'd go, okay, this is a terrible decision that we should never be forced to make, but actually, in terms of being humane, this is in the dog's best interest. Actually, we're not seeing that with this case.
We're seeing a healthy dog, and that doesn't compute with us. It's like, my dog's healthy. Yeah. Why should I be putting it to sleep? And I think there are a lot of things like that. I think this subject really does play to a lot of those human emotions. You know, common sense is, well, I should actually be making this action, but I'll do this one because it's easier, or because it's not really that difficult. And I think there's a lot of that across all different things, and there's misunderstandings. I mean, you look at these people who are, you know, very, very strong about rescue centre dogs, yet they'll go and ignore the dogs in the UK because they want to get one from abroad now because it's a smaller dog. And that's where I think the two things is, one, there's a less red tape in the abroad, because if your dog bites your kid, your chances of being able to sue these people is minuscule. Yeah. Finding out who they are, where they are, and the costs involved, it's just not worth it in a lot of cases. Yeah. So they don't really need to adhere to these rules and regulations that the UK rescue centres have to. They don't have a reputation to protect, and they don't have the risk of prosecution from the UK legal system. So they can just give you a dog no matter, oh, you've got kids, don't worry about it. No fenced-in garden, don't worry about it. Yeah. And therefore, that is something. But, you know, I want a dog. Well, if you go to the rescue centres in the UK, you're going to get a bigger dog. You're going to get lots of them at the moment are bully mixes, greyhounds, lurchers, Dobermans, some bigger dogs, some high drive dogs. They're not the, granted there are a portion of them, but 70 to 80% of those dogs are crossbreeds or mongrels, 3 breeds. So you're not going to get the little Cocker Spaniel or the little Labrador that you wanted, or, whatever. And I think that's the first misconception, is that I always say to people, you're going to look at a rescue centre, be prepared to compromise what dog you want.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't find, and you've got a small house, or you don't want to do a lot of exercise with your dog, you think a smaller one would be better, so therefore you're then ignoring all that. So, same things we were saying before, I should really be getting them from the UK, because those are, it's looking after those, sorting the UK system out. I'll just go and buy one from abroad.
Yeah.
Because it's the size I want. Or I've seen it in, I saw an advert on Facebook saying this dog's going to be put to sleep tomorrow if I don't rescue it. And they're playing.
Yeah, it's marketing.
It's just horrible to actually believe that you're being manipulated, and it's probably organised crime doing it. Yeah. You're being manipulated to buy a dog because somebody's basically holding a gun to your head saying, your compassion, I'll just use it against you.
Yeah, and I think something that I found really interesting about some of the articles was this idea that, people have got experience of rehoming dogs from abroad, and basically it's been a quick, send us a video of your home, no verification process for that. I could come here tonight.
That's why you had the camera out, was it?
But this idea that, send us a quick video of your home, have a quick video call, if even that takes place, maybe a phone call, no real checks that you are who you say you are, you live where you say you live. And then almost, I was reading these articles about how, and don't get me wrong, not all rescue centres will be like this from abroad, but this idea that then this dog just appears, and it's like somebody had actually termed it Deliveroo for dogs.
I saw that or read that on the article. Deliveroo for dogs, and people were they were almost like picking a dog, and then it was a completely different dog that turned up.
Yeah. It's just, I think when we ask ourselves and when we say, okay, I live in a fairly small house, maybe with an unsecure garden, I've got children under 5, and you say all of these things, and then you go, hang on a minute, the proportion of dogs that need rehoming in the UK goes from thousands to there might be 2 dogs in the country that are eligible for you on that basis, and you go, well, that's not good. I'll get them from abroad, because obviously that doesn't fit, what you're looking for, and that's fine. Exactly. But you have to ask yourself, what compromises are you prepared to make when people don't check, those things on your behalf? Because actually, a dog can become a very real problem in your home once it's there.
But on the reverse, for some people, I know I'm a responsible dog owner. I will take care of the dog. I will do whatever it takes. I am not going to give up on this dog after 15 minutes, and I will work and work and work. If I hire a trainer, I'll have to do this, and I'll do. So some people are super committed, and they take that red tape as an affront to the fact that you obviously don't think I'm a serious person. Yeah. So I can see that in the opposite way around. I'm going to go to there because I don't need these checks and balances. I've had dogs all my life. I know what I'm doing, and in some cases, that experience they probably feel is just dismissed by Dogs Trust and Battersea Dogs Hair, whatever. They don't see the other side of the coin, that they're actually trying to cover their own backs, make sure they're not going to have a legal problem coming down the line.
Yeah, and I think it's the psychology of it, and always with every topic that we cover on this podcast, that really kind of sets like my soul on fire about what the important issues are, because I just think I always go back to this idea of if you've had a dog, I personally believe, coming from not a wealth of experience but a lived experience of having a dog that is unwell and sick, and it's from a dog owner point of view, it's unavoidable as such. I think there's this idea that there's this idea, obviously, that you would want to do everything that you possibly can to avoid that the next time. And I just think there are definitely protective measures that can happen that I think that you would want. So if you're somebody that has adopted a dog that ends up then with Brucella Canis, you would want there to be organisations that advocate for you the next time to ensure that that doesn't happen to somebody else.
Certainly. Sorry, that was a bit dark. I just looked up.
And it literally had gone dark.
Dark, so there might have to be a bit of post-production after that, or you might just see a shadow of me. So you can see yourself in yours, can't you?
Yeah, could you not see that?
I just looked up and saw it. Because I looked at you, so there's a shadow, it's going a bit dark now. Checked, I was like, bloody hell, that's gone dark.
I think actually there'll be, this is like real life takes.
Yeah, there is no second time.
This will be testing with nature. The first time we had like a cow birthing up the lane. This time we'll be like, we might just become shadows of ourselves talking about this topic.
Well, we're amateurs at it, doing it for fun. I think you're very right, and I think that's the thing. It's, you know, I don't understand why. Maybe these people have never had a problem like this, so they never see it. And they just think, oh, it's like smoking, it's never going to affect me. But when it does, you tell everybody you shouldn't smoke, it's bad for you, don't do it. And I think maybe these people haven't had that life experience whereby they are feeling that, yeah, I do need to advocate for you need to do it this way.
We're so like a seeing is believing species though, aren't we? Like, if it's never directly happened to me and it hasn't affected me or somebody close to me and I haven't really got this lived experience, we don't really understand the importance of something until it affects us deeply, I don't think, in terms of a human behaviour point of view. So if we're looking at an animal and it looks well, or we don't know anybody that has adopted an animal that has suffered with a condition, or we haven't known somebody that's adopted an animal that then has been transmitted to a human that we know, we find it really difficult, I think, and me personally, you find it difficult to understand the implication of that, because at the moment, okay, people will listen to this and go, so we're talking roughly, 300, 400, 500 cases in the UK, and that might seem to people relatively small.
It's tiny.
To the number of dogs that we have.
Correct. But the reality is that because the spread of it is going to be something that you can't see, because the dogs don't get sick, that can lay asymptomatic for years, they could do another report in 12 months, there could be 16,000 cases. Yeah. And the next time you really see about this is when people are having their pregnancies aborted.
Are we willing to take that risk is the question. Why would we if there are things that we can proactively do to prevent this? And I think
what the proactiveness requires us to sometimes, if we take that test and there is a problem, is to have some pain. The reality is that I've either got to live with my dog almost in isolation, and I've got to be wearing gloves, and I can't let it do this, and I can't let it do that, and we can't have this. It's a completely different way of living. It can't sleep on my bed, I can't be doing kisses, it can't be licking me. So therefore, the whole process that you have has to change.
Yeah, and the ideology of what having a dog is changes.
Or put your dog to sleep. And that's it. It's a very, very serious decision, and I can easily understand why people have got a bit of pushback on it. But that pushback is getting to the point that the RSPCA were wrong, and they weren't the right organisation. The BBC were wrong. Everything was wrong.
Yeah, I think sometimes we want the narrative to align to our situation, don't we? We want to say, we don't want to stand up and say, I'm scared now of the prospect that I have a dog that I haven't tested because I don't know about this condition. Nobody talked to me about it. I didn't know that obviously nobody's had to test for it because it's not a legal obligation in this country. So now we don't want to come off our own back and think, well, we've got our beloved family pet in our home that the potential is we can do that test and that might happen, especially when something isn't legally enforced in this country. It's really,
And I say there's half a dozen other diseases at least that have been brought into this country by imported dogs, and it was conditions that they don't have. So there needs to be regulation, there needs to be a structure whereby somebody needs to be enforcing that import process. Dogs need to be tested. There can't be a way, of sneaking in the back door. And the problem at the moment is that there's no organisation out there to do so. I mean, I spoke to our council years ago, one of the first few years that we were licensed, and I said to them, you need to license every single person. If you breed dogs, you need to be licensed. Yeah. And their response was, we haven't got the amount of people to be able to get around and license everybody, and we then haven't got the amount of people to be able to enforce that licensing. And so that there is almost like there's got to be a whole step change in how we view dog ownership, because this will be, all you've got to do is look at the problems with dogs attacking people, attacking other dogs, the amount of untrained dogs. You look at the statistics for Wales, the numbers of livestock killed by dog attacks, the number of dogs shot by farmers. Yeah. Those they shouldn't be happening, and there are reasons why they're happening. But there needs to be a step change in how we live with dogs. Yeah. Because there's a lot of things that are just... It's a very... I see lots of different things, and it's just like it really is very, very weird. I'll give you an example. And things as simple as training. I have had... I could even talk about cleft lip puppy. Yeah. That's another one. The reason so many of them are put to sleep, yes, because it's too much hassle. It's too much hard work. He is not a dog that we can sell. We're going to, for the moment I decided to try and keep him alive, I am basically losing money on him. Yes. He will be given to somebody. I can't say, here, I want X amount of money for this dog. Yep. Because he's got a physical defect. Yeah. And it will be a dog that we will give to somebody. But I have had no sleep for the past 5 weeks. I mean, feeding him all that type of thing. So, but there's very, very few breeders who will do that. I spoke to a vet about him, and he went, "That's off to you," he said, "I don't know anybody that keep them alive." No. There's the odd charity that does it, but actual breeders taking the responsibility of keeping that puppy alive. But looking at that's that sort of thing. There needs to be a step change. Why aren't we keeping them alive? It's a life. It's something that we can actually do. Stuff on the internet with people saying these dogs shouldn't be kept alive because they're disfigured. Well, does it not deserve a chance at life? That's what I mean. Let's kill it. Well, should we do the same thing with, you're too short, pff, bang. We want people 6 foot tall. We
wouldn't do that with humans, would we?
We do it with a dog. Yeah. He's, touch wood again, going to the vets tomorrow. I hope he's healthy, and we'll then start to look for a home for him, and we'll find somebody who wants him and who will give him a great life, and he will have had a life. But yeah, I saw it. It's like I had it to say there's 2 people, and it could be anything, but it's just how they react towards it. First person speaks to me about training and says, my dog's got this problem, that problem, the other problem. Do you have any tips for me? And I messaged them and said, yeah, plenty of things. And there was a lot wrong with this dog. I said, yeah, give me a call. I need to go through some questions with you. I need to talk to you about this, that and the other. And we need to discuss this, discuss that, blah, blah, blah. Not heard a thing. Not heard a thing. And she just hasn't even come back to me. Now, another lady who I spoke to this last month has got a problem with her dog. So she rang me and said, right, well, send me some videos. So she did ring me first and foremost. She sent me 3 or 4 videos, brilliant. Critique those, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. She did it. And then I said, right, well, you need to do this next. She did it. She phoned me and said, can I come and see you now? I've done all the things you've told me. She sent me some videos of what she was doing. Came here, we spent an hour and a half, I did an assessment for her, and she went away full of ways that she can resolve the problem. Now, she'd been to a behaviourist before who'd said, just throw treats onto the bed to stop the dog. The dog was barking at everybody. Just throw treats onto the bed. It'll stop the dog. It'll be fine. And she did it, and she paid attention to what the behaviourist said, and it didn't work, obviously. Yep. As soon as you stop throwing treats on the bed, what's the dog going to do? Bark, 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 bark. Yeah. And so ultimately, those things are quite dangerous. But what it does, it identifies the fact that you've got people who are wanting to do nothing about problems that are in their own home, and people who are wanting to do everything. And I think that's the problem. You can't own a dog and do nothing. A, it's not fair on the dog to leave it in a state of anxiousness and fear when you can fix those problems by putting in some work. This dog is not anxious, the one that's barking, it's super excited. And we just need to calm the dog down a bit. But she's put in a lot of work before she came to see me. This person's done absolutely nothing. And that's where the step change needs to happen. We need to take that responsibility and take some tough decisions. I mean, licence everybody. Licence everybody who owns a dog. If you licence rescue centres, every single breeder, with sensible amounts of money, £100 a household, if you have a dog in your household, you've had 2 dogs or 3 dogs or 4 dogs, it's £100 every household. Breeders, you're charged £100 per dog that you have in your breeding portfolio. Rescue centres, you're charged an amount as well. You're looking at, I rate, from the figures I've done, £1 billion a year. £1 billion a year to set up a national database for everybody's dog to go on, a photo ID database, so we know dog against owner and dog against dog. So when you've got people out there who are being idiots with their dogs, they can show you their membership or not. You've got enough money then to spend on a task force to go around shutting down puppy farms, to go and checking on breeders, to go checking on rescue centres and checking on all these things and all these illegal importing of dogs, and basically keep on top of them and give them real powers of prosecution. And that £1 billion comes back every year.
Yeah, it funds that work, doesn't it? Yeah.
And it's easy enough. And we're supposed to be a nation of dog lovers.
Yes.
Why would you not say I'll pay £100 a year to make sure I get rid of get rid of puppy farms, that I can make sure that the rescue centre I buy my dog from is above board and credible, that we're not funding organised crime because they are putting up this narrative that we're saving these dogs when actually they're just shoving them in a trailer and sending them over to us. Yeah. My breeder, the breeder I buy my dog from, is a reputable breeder. Every single breeder will have to be licensed. You can only sell puppies if you are a licensed breeder, because the places that you'd sell it won't allow you to put an advert up unless you're licensed. Every single puppy that's born gets put on the database, so the breeders have access to this database, their own accounts, they put on their own puppies. Every single puppy has to be put on with a microchip number and then an owner's name put next to it. You can then check whether this person is on the database, whether they're a member already, then fine, well, we need to sign you up, photo ID, or has this person got a ban against them? Have they had, fines for dogs being out of control, or for, basically, has their dog been given ASBOs for running around the park and them going, it's friendly, don't worry. You can control all that. Yeah. So you take away an awful lot of problems. You can have a database for registering every dog, so you can have proper health checks so that you know your dog is coming from a broad cross-section that is really caring about animal welfare. Not as in the state of the RSPCA, nothing against the RSPCA, but they're trying to be all things to all men and cover everything. Well, they can't. The Kennel Club, same thing. Yeah. They are an organisation that has a conflict of interest. They make their money from people registering dogs, but they're then supposed to monitor and control health and welfare of dogs. And, you shouldn't be breeding that dog because its inbreeding coefficient's too high. You shouldn't be breeding those brachycephalic dogs because they're unhealthy. But doing that causes problems in our number of registrations we get, and therefore puts us in problems with our revenue streams. So there's a conflict of interest there. So they can't effectively be able to manage animal welfare. So take it out of the hands of the Kennel Club. You can do your show stuff and you can do all that bits and pieces, and you're a little organisation to yourself, fine. But you're not a be-all, end-all to everybody with dogs. They don't want to register crossbreeds. They don't want to register mongrels. Every single dog is registered on this database. That's my thoughts anyway.
And then it protects you from being that person that then feels victimised or penalised for adopting a dog or buying a dog, or then when something goes wrong, and then you don't feel that you're lumped in with everybody else that says you shouldn't have done this and you shouldn't have done that, actually, because we've enabled and we've funded basically a protection program to protect you from that, because it's monitored, sufficiently. And we know then that the dogs that we're buying or adopting or, looking after, working with, all of those things, we wouldn't expect to come across the same issues. And I do think that we get to a point in this country, we should all understand, and COVID is a perfect example of this, we will get to a point where the cases and the prevalence will become so high, or will start to affect, human reproduction and other things, that actually we will be forced to do something, and everybody will be blanket forced to do it. When we had a couple of cases of COVID, it was, are we going to go into a lockdown, are we not? As soon as the cases sufficiently rose, that's it, we were in it. And we'll get to that same point with issues like this, won't we?
Well, there's so many dogs in so many households. I think there is somewhere in the region of, they guesstimate, I guess, sort of between 11 and 13 million dogs in the UK.
Yeah.
So let's say 10 million dogs, 5 million households. If you're counting it, I'll make it simple.
House, yeah.
2 dogs per household. So 5 million households. And that's an awful lot of households to have potential problems with dogs in. It's like you have a farm and they might have 300 or 400 cattle. And people like, I live right next door to one, so I come into contact with them, but most people probably never come into contact with cattle other than going, oh, look at them in the field over there. But with dogs, everybody's coming into contact. You see dogs every single day of your life.
The quickest way in a way to infiltrate things in people's households is send it in through the dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a real problem. And granted, there are lots of symptoms that are a lot less than that.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that you can have problems at, and you just don't want it.
No, it's just bringing the information accurately to the forefront of people's minds to say this is the information. Like everything with this podcast, this is the information that you need to equip yourself to ask the right questions and make informed decisions.
Well, COVID, the end result is you might have had a sniffle, you might have had aches, you might have lost your sense of smell. The thing everybody focused on was this thing can kill you.
Yeah. Once it started killing hundreds of thousands of people, and once you're then somebody whose elderly relative or parent or child died from that condition, you then want significantly more funding, more research, more knowledge into this so that you can prevent it happening ever again when you've got that lived experience. If you're somebody that went through COVID having never contracted it or not knowing anybody who was significantly affected by it, you're not as invested about the progression of that. And like that lady who'd adopted a dog and then that dog had subsequently had puppies and then now is thinking about the consequences of that being more than just one in this country, you advocate for more research, more testing, more...
I think that's a really, really valid point, the fact that once you've lived it, you don't know how bad it is until you've lived it. And I think that's possibly where a lot of these people are coming from, in the fact that they are... happy in their viewpoint that it isn't a real problem because they don't want it to be a big problem, because they don't want it to affect them. But it's that just head in the sand saying it's not a big problem isn't going to stop it becoming a big problem. It is. It's just it is just phenomenal the amount of downstream problems that come from it when you're looking at all those things it spirals into, as I say, why are people buying from abroad? What's wrong with the UK rescue centres? How can they improve? And really, should we not be kicking back at the rescue centres and saying, it's not the rescue centres' problems? I mean, they're getting dogs from people who are giving their dogs up. Yeah. So the problem starts earlier than that. It's with why is so many people getting dogs and giving them up? Now, there will be a narrative out there that'll say, well, these people's, life circumstances change. And granted, there is a portion of those that do exist. However, you can't argue that that is the case for everything, because between 50 and 70% of dogs that come from rescue centres, owners have reported that they have had behavioural problems with those dogs. So when you're getting a dog from a rescue centre with a behavioural problem, you've got to assume that behavioural problem has caused that person previously to say, can't handle this, giving the dog up. You know, so you've got to look back and go, why are people buying dogs that either they don't have the commitment for, or are they buying the wrong dogs? They're buying, you know, high-drive Malinois, high-drive German Shepherds because they think it's a great dog to have. And then they want it to be their fur baby, and the Mallee goes, I'm not having this, bam, and turns into a land shark and bites everything it can. Like Looney did. His first 6 months of his life, he bit everything. Every day with training, I came back with blood because he just wants to bite. That's what they're designed to do. They are so high-drive.
Yep.
Now, it's very easy to give up on that, go, oh, but I was like, not a chance, mate, this boy's here for life. And it is, it's that sort of thing. It's, why are you buying a dog that, where's your research?
Yeah.
You know, what research has told you that this, you know, dog is the right dog for you? You know, on the reverse of that, then we have people who have training problems with them and the dog develops a behaviour. It's not just necessarily too high drive, but this dog then becomes a problem because the training that they're... I had a Labrador here for an assessment. Lady was wanting to rehome it. The Labrador had bit her kid. And she was going through the training of what had happened, and I was just asking and assessing with her. And I said, your trainer has told you stuff that's wrong. Your trainer has caused you this problem. The reason why your dog has bitten your kid is because your trainer has told you a whole host of incorrect information. And she was, when the dog was reacting and kicking off, she was stroking it. Calm down, calm down, calm down. You're rewarding it. So the dog thinks it's doing the right thing. It kicked off in front of me as somebody was walking down the lane, and I just stepped to the dog, just stepped in front of it, blocked it, I went, sit down. The dog just backed and sat down, lay down. And it just needed that bit of strong discipline to say, no, you don't do that. But there is too many people who, again, this whole, and again, more subjects for the future. My fur baby, you know, I don't want to say no to my dog. We've come across that before. Yep. And you don't actually teach your dog what's right and what's wrong. And therefore the dog takes liberties. Not because it's out for itself or it's a selfish thing. Dogs don't understand those emotions. Dogs are just dogs. And they just do what they want to do.
Yeah. Like learnt behaviour and when it's been reinforced.
And so therefore you have people who have problems like that because the training that they give, or in some respects, the belief system that they have, I don't want to say no to my dog. You know, I can't tell it off. And I have had people who've come to me like that. I can't tell my dog off. Well, then I would suggest you start looking for a new home for it. Because unless you're going to tell your dog that it can't do what it's doing, why is it going to ever stop? Yeah. You know, and you have trainers, behaviourists out there who are giving you the wrong advice. Your dog's barking like a lunatic at people who walk through the door, and we're going to throw treats on the bed for it. Bark, 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 throw some treats. What are we doing? We're rewarding that behaviour. Yeah. Bark, bark, bark. There's some treats for you, buddy. Well done. I'll keep throwing them at you. Well, if I bark again, you'll throw some more for me. It's just ludicrous. What would I say? Bonkers.
Bonkers. That's gone very dark now.
Has it? You see, filming in parts. The professionals are here somewhere, but we're not them. Yes. So, yeah, I think you've got to look further back and you've got to say, why are there so many dogs in rescue centres? And if everybody was actually, you know, licensed as an owner and you were then going to give a dog up, there'd be no abandonment because every single dog would be microchipped. You can scan those microchips. It's one single database. Everybody knows where the dogs are. So you'll know who's abandoned a dog. Yeah. So therefore, there's no getting around it like that. Just dumping my dog. Yeah. And it's not been microchipped. I don't need to worry about it. Yeah. You know, there are so many little side things that improve from it. You know, you could even go and say, well, we need to licence every dog walker, every doggy daycare. Yeah. You know, because there does need to be a level of care. I saw a video a while ago, doggy daycare there must have been 50 or 60 dogs in this arena, if you like. There was a fight. Somebody went in to rescue and stop the fight. They went down and I don't know what happened to them, but they were coming to stop a fight when these dogs were piling in. It's like bar fights when dogs start fighting. Yeah. And this person just went down. and I don't know whether they survived. I don't know whether they got mauled or what. I just don't know. So again, there needs to be numbers of dogs in daycare centres. Yeah. You can't just put loads of dogs together.
Yeah, we absolutely adhere to things better and, you know, well, when there are laws and rules and regulations and things and guidance that we have to adhere to. You know, it's all there for the protection of all of these things. And actually, like you say, we're not there yet, are we, in the dog world, where we say, this is what we're doing to protect you, to protect your dog, to protect all these situations from arising.
But if we took and I know it's very difficult to take the emotion out of it because dogs are such an emotive subject. You know, everything we talk about, as I said before, from food to training tools to types of training to even to dog breeds, a crossbreed, a pure breed. People are so, you know, tribal about what they believe in that they sort of are very blinkered about that. And I think there needs to be a group of people who can almost like oversee it, but people from all different sides. So you can't just say, well, we have to have people who are business people to run that business. We need to have people who are also able to understand all sides of training. We need to have vets in there. We need to have people who are knowledgeable about, you know, medication of dogs, and we need to have a group of people who can discuss these subjects and have a very balanced view to say, yeah, okay, I understand you are a force-free trainer, but look at the other side of it. This is when you need to use things other than force-free. And there is a lot of, you know, people. I went to see a trainer. Okay, I'll give you an example about how people get lost in the absolute lunacy of what they might hear. January this year, I went to Birmingham to do a training course. Guy had come over from America, and this guy is a phenomenal trainer, one of the best in the world in my opinion, and in lots of people's opinions. And I've spent telephone numbers being trained by this guy. I've been through his school. There's probably, I think last time I counted, there was less than 400 people worldwide who'd been through this school. He's very selective who he picks. But he came to the UK to do a seminar, and they were mounting a petition to stop him coming into the country. This guy's a dog abuser. This guy's this, and they had just got him all so wrong. Yeah. All so wrong. And, you know, there was silly comments like, well, why do we need to bring trainers in from America? We've got enough good trainers in the UK. Well, you know, we've got enough good musicians in the UK. Should we just ban all American musicians from touring here and doing concerts here? It was just mad. But they were putting this petition together that this guy was just an evil person. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. I went through his main training school, and they were saying he abuses dog, he's this, he's that, he's horrible to dogs. And he did a whole module at this school and basically showed us these dogs, little clips of these dogs being abused, and he read the riot act. If I catch any one of you doing anything like this, you'll be out. Yeah. Don't you ever. And he read the riot act to us. And it wasn't like, I don't care about it. He was serious about it. But people don't see that, and the courses aren't cheap. They're super expensive. And people were then going, can't be worth the money. I've been on courses quarter of that price. It's like, you haven't been on a course with this guy. Yeah. People's viewpoints are so narrow. We select the things, don't we, the narratives that we want to fit our agenda sometimes. And we have to be open to the critique of other people saying, hang on a minute, step back and look at it from a triangulated point of view. And that's where the problem comes, because it would be lovely to think that we could create a situation, or the government could create a situation, not us, could create a situation, yeah, me and you, wasn't it? Where everybody got licensed and they spent, they put a plan into place to develop a database and have a bunch of people who are in effect like a police force for it, to be able to make sure that dogs were properly looked after in all different walks, and owners were looked after, that you weren't being ripped off by puppy farms, and that maybe there was a database of loads of information for you, so you could get all different aspects of what was right and what was different, what you liked and what you didn't like. Just because you don't use a particular type of training or harnesses and collars.
Yep.
I mean, you know, there is just such a divide on something so simple. Neither of them are wrong,
Yeah.
but there are things and times where a harness is much better than a collar and vice versa. But we don't have that for most harness. You've got to have a harness, you've got to have a harness, you've got to have a collar, you've got to have a... You know what I mean? It's just...
It's
so polarised. So, you know, all those things could help owners, but we've got to help ourselves first.
Yeah.
And we can't start by saying that, oh, well, yeah, all these tests for Brucella Canis, you know, all these tests they did on it, they were faulty, the tests. It's just untrue.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difficulty in that we're never going to help each other if we can't help ourselves. And some of the decisions are difficult to make, but it does boil back to why are so many people getting dogs and having to give them up?
Yeah.
I think there's at the last count, I think there was over 100,000 dogs that were in shelters or rescue centres around the UK.
Yeah.
Why?
And just taking that information and asking yourself why is a good starting point, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, not everybody who wants a dog should have a dog.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you look at it that way, you have got to look at the rescue centres who in the UK are putting red tape up and saying, do you know what? Damn good job you do, because if you didn't, there'd be a load more people. I had a survey 2 years ago, I read it, and it was from, I think it was from an American organisation who had rescue centres. And the problems with rescue centres, as I understand it, isn't just the UK. Yeah. We have, you know, behavioural problems all over Europe in their rescue centres. America has the same problems. But this rescue centre in America was doing a survey, and they were sending out, or not sending out, this guy was doing phone calls. So he's phoning 2 months, all these dogs, when they were placed, they had a 2-month break, and they were then phoning, there'll be bats flying around in a minute. There's loads of things, owls go over.
Catching it all.
And they do a 2-month callback to make sure everything's going okay. Anyway, doing these 2 months callback, doing these 2-month callbacks to homes where their dogs had gone, the dogs had been rescued, they found that, surprisingly, what they were doing was phoning up to make sure everything was okay, is there any support we can give you? Yep. They found that 2/3 of the dogs were no longer at those addresses.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
Now, they didn't say where those dogs had gone. There was nothing more about that, but it was 2/3 of these dogs were no longer there at those addresses. So whether they'd gone back to rescue centres or whether they'd been euthanised is another matter. Yeah. But I think, you know, when you have an organisation like the RSPCA or like the Blue Cross or whoever it is who's who's got these dogs in rescue centres, you've got to look at that and say there's got to be a reason why, not just trying to protect themselves, but there's got to be an angle that they do realise that, and how committed are you to be a dog owner?
Yeah.
And probably stopping it. I mean, we go right back to Stacey Solomon.
Yeah. And
she got aggro because she got a dog from a rescue centre and she's got kids.
Yeah. And people feel that they haven't had the same opportunity, you know. But equally, you've got to ask yourself, I sometimes think with these things, if you go through something in life, or there's a regulation or there's a rule or some guidance, and somehow somewhere along that journey something seems unfair or it doesn't fit your need, or there's some barrier or blockage to whatever that thing is that you're trying to access or do, I think sometimes you've got to ask yourself, who has been previously affected before that made that become a regulation or a rule or a law, or because these things don't just come around because everything's worked perfectly forever. They've come around because that red tape hasn't been there and a dog's gone and then it's bitten a child, or then it's been euthanized, or these things are in almost like everything we do is like trial and error, isn't it? Well, you know,
all you've got to do is just look at the bully breed ban. Yeah. That was a knee-jerk reaction because it got out of control. Yeah. And the government went, holy smoke, what are we going to do? Yeah. Ban them.
We have to act, yeah.
Spay and neuter them all. You've got to wear a muzzle. That's not the right decision for the breed. No. But that's the decision they came up to because...
To protect, yeah.
So the same thing is going to happen if this disease of Brucella Canis gets out of control.
We have to be open to the implications of that, really, because we can live in ignorant bliss and say, OK, well, I'm not going to test and I'm willing to take the risk and my dog doesn't look ill, you know, coming full circle on this topic. But then we have to say we might contribute to the prevalence and the numbers of dogs that are affected. And then we have to be open to what will happen in the future if we just are ignorant to this.
Well, when you have people who are pulling a narrative saying it's low risk, which we talked about before, but it's a highly problematic disease if you catch it. Low risk is not acceptable. No. So why are we saying it's low risk? Because you've got to ask that question. Why are they trying to protect themselves? You know, why are we running with a narrative that we should be saying we need to sort this out? We know what it can do. Thank goodness it's a very low risk at this moment in time because very few dogs have it. Yeah. But it won't remain like that.
Yeah. I think, like you've said perfectly, the narrative needs to change. The actual disease isn't low risk. We're just saying it's low risk because the numbers in this country are low-ish of what we know of at the moment. And then the humans that have it as a consequence of that appear low at the moment. But what we've got to equip ourselves with the knowledge is we don't actually know enough about this, really, to determine that low risk for prevalence or for risk to human life. So we can't really just go with this narrative at the moment of it, well, it won't affect us, so we're okay.
We know it jumps species.
Yep.
It has been doing it for hundreds of years in cattle, goats, sheep. I think there's about 13 strains of it.
Which is like terrifying enough in its own right.
Well, you may be too young to remember there was, you know, loads of people caught it because they were having unpasteurised milk and dairy products. I lived that. Yep. So those are the things that you end up with a problem with, and luckily, in that case, because it was in the beef herd, the milk and the beef, the government had to step in and put loads of money in to actually produce a culling programme, as I said, to sort it out. Are they going to step in before it gets a problem? We end up having to cull lots of dogs. Is there going to be mandatory testing? If your dog has it, we cull it.
Yeah.
Because that's
huge questions, aren't they?
There are huge questions about this, and if we stick our head in the sand much more,
we might end up at that place.
Yeah. The other side of the argument, whether we should licence rescue centres, becomes irrelevant. Yeah. Because that's a tiny little problem now, because we're dealing with a disease that is endemic in the dog population, and we're infecting, you know, dozens, hundreds, thousands of people a year. So we need to do something about it. And we've started because we've been our own worst enemy. We can't even save the planet from, you know, global warming. You know, I read an article and somebody said we are the first species in history that won't save itself from extinction because it's not commercially viable. Yeah. I mean, it's the same sort of thing.
It is the same thing.
But to me, it's like we've got to do something about it. Otherwise, we're going to have a big problem.
I like bringing the big topics to this podcast now.
Do you know what? It's interesting to get your view from it because, as I say, you are a dog owner. I see it from inside, and I saw it 3 years ago, and I've had grief over it with people saying, oh, this doesn't exist, it's this, it's that, it's the other. And it's interesting to see you look at it and go, bloody hell.
I can just look at it as a lay person from the outside perspective of owning a dog and thinking, we're heading for something here. If we don't prevent, that may force our hand to do something that none of us want to do.
There's no vaccine for it. They haven't got the ability to control it anyhow, anyway. Now, it's been around for numbers of years, and I would have thought the only reason there isn't a vaccine for it is because it's been in street dogs and there's no money in street dogs abroad. But there's money in it. Somebody has got to, if they're doing Ozempic for dogs, somebody sees, do you know what, we need to get a Brucella Canis vaccine. If we can't control it with antibiotics, then really have we got a hope of catching it and killing it with a vaccine? I'm not that knowledgeable on that. But either way, we need to do something about it to actually step it up. And it's really interesting to see, you know, obviously you'd only come across it in the last few weeks with that report. Yeah. And to sort of see your views on this is what is happening with it. And I've had that view from day dot. Yeah. But to have people who don't share that view, I find it difficult to understand as to why. Yes, I can see the angle that it might affect me and I might have to lose my dog, or I might have to live differently with my dog. Yeah. But to actually stick your head in the sand when you know about it and just want to do nothing about it, I find it a bit difficult to sort of, because I've lived it. Yeah. I had to test. I didn't have to test, should I say. I had to test because I didn't want to bring a dog and then breed a dog and infect my other dogs, infect myself, infect my friends. Yeah. Just didn't want to do it. It wasn't relevant.
But you've lived that experience of the unknown. And
it's hard. And I know there are people who were testing because of what I'd said, and they went through the same thing. But, you know, as a nation of dog lovers, a nation of animal lovers, we need to do it.
We can do more, can't we?
Yeah. Not just to protect our dogs, but to protect everybody else's dogs, if our dog has got it.
Yeah, be interesting to hear everybody's thoughts on listening to this. Let's see.
I don't know. I don't know what people think. I mean, I think ultimately...
Let's see.
Yeah, see whether anybody says anything.
Yeah, we can always bring it back again and advocate for us. Yeah, let's see what people think.
Yeah, if you've got anything to tell us, people, if anybody is watching still at 2 hours gone.
Yeah, as always with our conversations.
Been good.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'd say no science really this week, nothing.
No, and that's, I think, something that I would bring to people's attention. If you're working in this space or you know somebody that is, or you are interested or capable, there are more unanswered questions about this than anything that we've come across in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
So such a good space to be asking that question, both in vaccinations, both in prevention, both in actual prevalence, because I genuinely don't believe from what I've read, because of this pushback on testing to know, an answer to something that we might want to be ignorant to for our own emotion. There is more out there that we can do.
Yeah, and it must be very difficult to do owner surveys. You know, they're unreliable at the best of times. Mm-hmm. When I say unreliable, I mean they fluctuate so much because your perception of one thing is different to somebody else's. So from that point, it's very interesting to sort of think, if you're in this space, how do you get past that blockade to get to the truth of the matter? Because people aren't going to let you test your dogs willy-nilly. No. Because the ramifications of that are quite drastic. Yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, because I saw it in the social media and the press and everything, and I don't know whether it's developed any further over the last few weeks. I've been sort of busy with other things, but I don't know whether I've missed it or whether it's just dropped away now. Yeah,
well, in looking at the last 4 weeks, obviously, and that report was mid-July, there's no real change in the...
Push forward for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's just one of the things that disappear. But yeah, it's a serious problem. And again, I don't want to get to a situation where it's dogs that are having it... Because there's little chance of it going human to human. That's not where the problem comes from. No. It is very, very unlikely that you can transmit it to another human. The ease of transmission, or the easier route of transmission, is from dog to human. Yeah. And if there's so many dogs with it, then it'll just step out of control. Scary. Yeah.
Positive note to end on.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for sticking with us.
And our camera changes. I don't know what the end footage is going to look like, but we were certainly getting darker, and we've ended on a bit lighter. But it's absolutely pitch black here.
It is.
So our apologies if we have a little bit of a fluctuating...
A fade in the light, but
fading light, yeah.
You can hear us, and that's all that matters about...
We'll try to do a bit of post-production and put a bit of extra exposure on it, but it was nice to film outside. It was cooler.
It was.
As in temperature-wise.
Yes.
And
cooler,
and it is a lot cooler. But yeah, so thank you if you're still watching. I appreciate it. I hope this has given you some more information, and sort of, again, there's no right or wrong here. You know, it's very much, this is the information, and it's about putting that in your space so that you can then look at it and make a decision about it, and be informed. You know, are you going to put your dog in a doggy daycare where there is 15 other dogs from, Romania, street dogs, without actually knowing this information.
And asking the questions.
Well, this is it. At least if you ask the questions, you can make an informed decision rather than being told, I'm sorry, this dog's actually got Brucella Canis, and exactly as an afterthought, and your dog might have it, you need to get it tested. So it just gives you that information. And if you've got a subject you want us to cover, just put it in the
comments.
See what we come with. But I'm sure Dr. Jodie will have some more subjects for the next month's instalment. But yeah, thank you very much, and we shall wind it up there, and we'll see you in another month.
Nice.